Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Hello, good afternoon, Shanta. Wonderful. How are you?
Yes, I'm doing well. So, how's your day? Are you having a busy day today?
Yes, of course. I'm okay with it, but the entire day was good actually. Just busy with, as you know, it's the month of fasting, so just busy with the work. So that's it. But it's good.
Okay, so are you fasting?
Yes, I am currently fasting. Yes.
Okay. I mean, I really, I don't know what to say. You guys have so much of resilience and willpower because there are some people who do not even have water during the fast period. So,
Yes.
and it is summer. So I know of a few people who would say like it is hot and still they are not allowed to have water because they're on fast. So I would really look up to those people.
Thank you so much. I think it's like, totally because of course we do it something for the sake of God, right? So it just happens naturally. And of course in the beginning it gets really thirsty. I feel extremely thirsty in the beginning, but then it's fine, once you get used to it, you get the habit of it. So it's fine.
I think initially it is difficult to keep that habit also. Like, has it happened by
Yes,
mistake? You just took a sip of water by mistake. Has it happened?
yes, it did happen. When I was a kid back then, I still remember, I just had a sip unintentionally, of course. And then after I had a full, I just had half of glass, half of glass of water. And then I ran to my mother saying, oh my God, I broke my fast. How would I do it? Now I'm no more fasting and all. But she was like, it's okay if you've done it unintentionally. So it's allowed, it's permissible. Okay. Otherwise, if you're doing it intentionally, then of course you have you break your fast. But yes, things like these happen in the beginning, and it gets a bit difficult because your body is not used to it, your mind is not used to fasting, like knowing the fact that you can't drink water or have food. So it's initially difficult, but then later on we get the hang of it, so it's fine.
Okay. Okay. So if before we proceed further into the conversation, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the viewers.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Firdaus Fatima, and I have done my graduation and my master's in English language teaching. Okay, and I am currently working as a tutor uh, for teaching English as a second language, and I have experience in teaching English, spoken English specifically, for like 2+ years, I would say, and beginning with my journey, like how I began into it, I would say, uh, it started from a very young age, actually, because earlier I had this habit. Again, it was done totally unintentionally and, just out of hobby, I would say. What I used to do is basically I used to go to different classes in my school. During my school days, I used to go in different classes, and whatever proverbs or quotes which used to be hung over there in the classes, we had this thing that in every class there has to be a chart full of quotes, okay, or proverbs, be it English, and it could be related to any topic or any theme. So I used to go and I used to read those topics, and I mean those quotes actually, and then whichever I used to like, I used to write it down, and then later on, after 2 years or something, I believe, I had this huge journal of quotes, a whole huge book of quotes, a huge, like a record of quotes of
Mhm.
various topics. And I used to write it down. I used to design it and decorate it. So that's how I actually began, getting into this language. And that actually gave me a kickstart to, begin my English journey and get into this field, and be able to help students over the years to build up their speaking skills, or their writing skills, etc.
Okay. So did you always want to become a teacher? Were you inclined towards teaching?
Yes, I was always inclined towards being a teacher, professor, I would say. Like it was all, and that too, of English specifically, because earlier, when I was a kid, I had this hesitation of speaking. So I had this thing that no, I want to overcome this thing, and and coming from a background as well, where my mom is a teacher, my grandfather, grandmother, and all, they were all into this, this teaching field. So I always had this thing that if you're a teacher, you can speak very well. You're a good speaker. I had this thing in my mind. So I was always inclined towards, being a teacher, getting into this profession. So this was something which came in, like, this was, so, to be very honest, it was inherited to me.
Exactly, yes. And after joining as a trainer or a teacher, so how's your experience so far? And is it satisfying, or what do you feel about it?
Of course, like, after joining or after like coming into this field, after completing my education as like, in this field and then being able to deliver my knowledge to other people, I think it is phenomenal. It gives a really good feeling, that, you're able to impart you're able to give your knowledge, you're able to share your knowledge to other people. And of course, it's really satisfying to see. And not just like, in teaching, I feel like while teaching, I even learn simultaneously.
Right,
You
right.
know, the issues what people face. There's so many issues that people face
Mm.
while speaking or like performing the other various skills of language. I think so. It's a learn and learn and teach process that goes on. So I think it's quite satisfying for me, and I think it's phenomenal.
I think teaching is one of the very good ways of learning. So if you want to ace
Yes,
something, teach it to someone, so you will learn.
it is. Absolutely, absolutely. And then you can learn it for, for a longer period of time. It stays
Right.
in your memory for a long period of time because when you learn and then because when you know that you're going to teach people, obviously you try to gain knowledge on a solid way, in a solid way so that you do not have any mistakes or try to impart as much as knowledge you can. So I think you can learn it for a longer period of time.
Right, right. So since you have an experience, I would love to discuss further questions about learning English for people who are watching this. So before that, where exactly are you working now?
I am currently working as a tutor at a platform named Speaking Fever, which is particularly like exclusively designed for learners of all levels of all ages. And it is exclusively for speaking, to enhance their speaking skills, to build their fluency, and for them to be able to speak confidently. So I'm working there as a tutor.
Okay, so do you provide one-on-one or group sessions?
Yes, yes, we provide one-on-one sessions for people. What they do is they begin like they begin by having a demo session, and then
Okay.
it's a one-to-one session, and then later on that's how it starts.
Okay, so I guess are you providing any free demo for people to?
Yes, yes. Yes, yes, we do. Like, people who try to come on this website. First, what we do is like we provide them a free demo session. Okay, so that they can analyze. And in that demo session as well, like what we do is we try to analyze the people because I think different people have different issues with speaking. Not everyone has the same issue. There are
Right.
people who are fluent from the very beginning. There are people who are not at all fluent. There are
Yeah.
people who are fluent, but they just have this hesitation of speaking, or their mind gets blocked while they speak because of the lack of uh, topics or lack of knowledge on a particular topic. So what we do is we try to analyze these things in a demo. Okay. And of course, using fun activities, interactions, and all these things, exercises, and all, we try to do that. And then we try to, after analyzing them, what we do is we recommend them what kind of plan they should register in. And then that's how we begin.
Hmm. Okay, okay. So I'll come to the first question, that is, how can beginners start learning English? So that is one basic question many people ask: how to start, where to start, what to do right at the beginning of learning English.
I feel like, and for beginners, speaking it is a productive skill, right? It's not a receptive skill. You produce speech. So, in the beginning, I think it becomes really overwhelming for people,
Hmm.
to be able to speak. So I think the very first thing which I personally recommend, and I have even tried it on myself, is to not memorize words in isolation, rather use those words or try to get words or know the vocabulary by being in situations, in whatever situations you are there on a daily basis. For
Mm.
example, like, for a beginner, I would say, like, for example, a school going person or a child, I think, like, you go to a school, right? You go, you learn so many other subjects. So try to learn those, or like, try to understand, not even learn actually, but try to, like, understand words which you encounter on a daily basis from contexts. So I think that is how a person can actually kickstart their journey in, like, understanding English, or like to learn what English is and all of that. And then apart from that, I think watching daily news or movies, because I also understand that people don't usually watch news these days, like,
Yes.
it gets really boring. I mean, it's I think it's quite a conventional way of beginning, or like how I actually began my journey. But I think these days, I think the best way and the most interesting way, which I feel like, it's quite captivating people and you can understand things quite easily, is by watching movies, good
Mm.
English movies, and also repeating, like, or like, what do you say, mimicking the native speakers. I think
Okay.
that's how you can actually begin by a beginner can start.
Okay, excellent. That's right. So there's another section of people who say that they know English. They know English, everything is there in the mind. They can understand English very well. And they feel that I can speak English. I know everything, I can speak English. But when you come to the
Hmm.
reality, they are not able to speak. Something happens. There are a lot of people who complain, my legs start to shiver, or I
Hmm.
cannot speak for some reason. So what would you like to tell them which that will help them?
I think what they personally, I would like to tell them that, whatever they are facing, it is something which is completely normal. Even the most professional speakers, or like, well-known, profound speakers face this issue. And the only way this thing would, like, vanish away is through practice.
Mm.
Okay. So before, like, going to the podium, or before delivering a speech, or getting into a competition, etc., whatever the situation is, I think the best way is to first try to, like, calm down your mind,
Mm.
think all the points in your mind, right? Get it gathered into your mind. And the best, and even before doing that, I think the very first thing which people should do is, write down those points
Exactly.
after getting the topic or whatsoever. For example, like, if these speech competitions, or like, elocution competitions, etc., which used to happen earlier, and it happens today as well. What I used to personally do is, I used to, as soon as I get the topic, or as soon as I get to know the topic, I used to write on whatever comes to my mind, whatever, like, irrespective of what, like, irrespective of how I structure it. Is it an intro, whether that point can come in the introduction part, or the main body, or in the conclusion. I never used to think of that. What you do is, whatever comes to your mind, the very first things, those things that come to mind, write it down in a piece of paper,
Mm.
right? And then that's how you develop your ideas, and try to, like, if you are facing this issue, like, I see so many people, literally their hands start getting, like, sweaty, their feet, they start fidgeting. Sometimes they're like, they use a lot of pauses, and, like, their body language completely changes. So all that thing, try to, like, comfort, take deep breath, of course, you know think in English, but try not to, like, there are people whom I see. I feel, like, they face this issue because they try to translate the sentence from their
Mm.
native language to the English
English.
language. So I try not to do that. Write it down in a piece of paper, gather it in your mind, structure it, and then you will be able, and then everything will go smooth.
That's right. I totally agree that spoken English is more about psychological rather than technical. Technical, you
Yes,
need that will help you in writing, but was speaking is
yes.
more of psychological.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because, like, everything, the very first thing, and even the most, as I mentioned earlier, I see so many professional speakers as well, so many, like, famous personalities as well. Before going on to the podium, they have this thing, like, they do face anxiety, or this sweatiness, or etc., or like, they have this fidgeting issues. I think but once they reach the podium, everything just vanishes. So everything is psychological. Take deep breaths. Yeah, and
Mm.
have a good preparation beforehand. I think that would help, to vanish away these faces, these
Exactly.
issues.
Yes, yes. So this reminds me of another question. Uh, there are a lot of introverts, right? English is already so a problem for a lot of people, especially if they're introverts. It's a language for communication. So you have to
Yes,
speak in order to learn the language. But for introverts, that
yes,
is the
yes.
problem, speaking. So any tips
See,
for introverts how they can learn speaking English?
I personally feel that, if introverts wants to begin, with speaking, I would rather, ask them to talk to themselves, because one thing I've noticed in introverts is, they talk a lot to themselves. They do a
Exactly.
lot of self, right? So talk aloud, talk loudly. When you're
Mm,
an introvert, lock yourself in a room, talk loudly to yourself. Okay. And of course, even after, even though you're an introvert, there are people whom those introverts are close to, or they feel a comfort, or feel safe around. So try
mm,
speaking in those kind of environments rather than a large crowd at once. Rather, before that, try to speak with yourself, record yourself. I think for the very best way to for introverts, I would say, to begin with speaking is record yourself, talk to the mirror. Okay. Talk in the mirror and record yourself, and you'll understand what your flaws are, what your drawbacks are, what you need to add on, what you need to delete on, right? So that is how I feel introverts can begin talking.
mm. Yes, they can begin talking, but it's always better to talk to a fluent speaker because you need
Yes.
somebody to give you feedback or what mistake
Yes.
you're making. So initially to begin with, it is fine, mirror and recording, but at the end of the day, you need feedback and you need somebody to correct your mistake.
Yes, yes. When you when you consciously do this thing, I think yes, of course, I agree with it. They need feedback. They need someone who can suggest them or
Yes.
advise them. So I think for that, yes, talk to a tutor, or someone whom you are you feel safe around. Okay,
Mm.
to speak, be it family or your your proper teacher or someone. So I think that's a very good way to begin with.
Right, right. So I also believe that, grammar, vocabulary, they are the backbone. They're like foundation for spoken English. But I also believe that don't mug up grammar books because that's not going to help you when you're talking spontaneously while speaking English. But when it comes
Absolutely.
Yeah, but when it comes to vocabulary, it is required. People need to know a lot of words in order to make sentences, to speak in English. But also, it is very difficult to remember words. You learn 5, 10 words or whatever you write down, you make sentences. After 15 days, they are gone. So, do you have any tips on how people can remember or improve their vocabulary?
Again, for this thing, I would rather suggest them to use those words, or use such words in a context. Learn words in a context. Try to understand in which context, in which situation, because what we speak is completely situational, right? Our speaking, our the skill enhances or basically changes based on a situation where we are speaking, whom we are speaking to. All
Yes.
right, so all these external factors are there when it comes to speaking.
Mm.
So for them to understand these kind of vocabulary, because mugging up just a vocab, because if I give you a simple example just right now, a really good example comes into my mind. For example, if I say you a sentence that Shanta works at a water plant. Okay. And another sentence is Shanta likes to plant trees.
Mm.
So you see, the word plant over there in the first sentence, Shanta works at a water plant. The meaning is completely different. Like water plant is basically, plant over there means refers to a workplace,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And in the second sentence, Shanta likes to plant trees. Plant over there is a thing a tree or small shrub, you could say, which Shanta likes to plant or soil, right? So you see, a simple word plant, okay, vocab, but the meaning completely changes based on the situation, based on the sentence. So I
Yes.
think students should I think students should try to understand, or learn words in this way, on the basis of context where they're using. And then of course there are with the help of AI as well.
Mm.
Recently I just got to know using technology you can also remember words. I think Duolingo, we have this apps like Anki,
Yes.
Memrise, all these all these kind of AI apps, they try to reinforce vocabulary.
Mm.
Yes,
Right,
and
right.
try to use them consciously. So you'll be able to, and then of course read stories as well. Try
Mm.
to remember them in terms of stories, dialogues, or plays. So I think that's a very good way of storing those vocabulary into your memory, because you have these two kinds of memory. You have passive memory and then active memory. The words are there in your passive memory. Once if you learn it in this way, the words are there in your passive memory. But then to come to your forward, your active memory, it takes time. So I think these ways, like if you learn words in this ways, it will definitely come to your active memory, and you'll be able to recall vocabulary well.
I would also like to add here that learn vocabulary as it comes. It shouldn't be like a stress for you. I need to learn 5 new words today. That's not going to happen.
Yes.
You're not going to remember it. 1 or 2 words is
Yes.
fine. Just try to do a lot of reading or listening practice, and you will come across a lot of words. And it's not that crucial for you that you have to remember every word that you have learned. Maybe some words are really attractive to you, and you feel this is a nice word. It is nice if I put it into my speech. So, like that, when you come across words in a repetitive way, that is going to enhance your vocabulary, and that you will remember that. So, do not stress yourself that I have to learn advanced vocabulary,
Yeah,
5 or 10 each
they
day.
have like I feel like the people have this this misconception. I would say that only if you use heavy loaded vocabulary, only then you are a good speaker, or only then you have. It's nothing like that. Even the I think people should focus on, how you deliver what you are, like, your knowledge in a simple way.
Correct.
Even the most difficult topics can be delivered by using the most simplest words. And I think that is more difficult than using all those, heavy loaded vocabulary. So I think people should focus on that, because, speaking, it's a skill,
Yeah.
something you do it on a daily basis. It's not
Hmm.
something like, rocket science. You're doing a sort of experiment. It's nothing like that. So don't take things, so much on your nerves, and relax and learn things in a fun way. Yes, I agree with it.
Yes, yes. Speaking the language is a skill. It's not like a talent that you're born with. It's a skill. Anybody can
Yes, yes.
develop it.
It's not like, acquired. It's something which can be developed over the years.
Yes, yes. Okay, so tell the audience how they can book a demo session and how they can join Speaking Fever.
It's very simple. What they have to do is they'll just visit our website. Okay. After visiting the website, they'll get an option. Click on, the option of get a free demo session. And the way how they can, scroll that website is completely easy. They can navigate it very well. It's easy to navigate as well. So what they have to do is just click on the demo. They'll focus, and they can even choose the time, which time which is best suited for them. It is totally up to their will, and whosoever is available at that time, the tutor will be able to give them a free demo session.
Okay, that's excellent. So, after the session, just give me the link so that I'll just add it in the description and people can visit the website from there.
Sure, sure, of course, I will.
Okay. So, is there anything else you would like to add to the session? Anything you wanted to ask me? Anything before we end the session?
I mean, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me here, for having such a great discussion on this topic. And I think something, and you're doing a great initiative, that, you're trying to spread this awareness of speaking, and, trying to involve people at such a large scale, that speaking is not something which is rocket science or something which is difficult to do, but something which is very fun and easy to do. So it's a
Mhm.
great initiative. I would like to congratulate you for that. So, congratulations. And yes, apart from that, I just want to, uh, ask you, your journey on it, and like how you began this journey, and what your YouTube channel is all about.
Hmm. Yes, my YouTube channel. Okay, even I used to work as a trainer at another platform. So after that, I just quit because I was not able to manage. I wanted something which involves like being my own boss. So I just started my YouTube channels. From there it has been working well. And about my English learning journey, I've been learning English since my childhood, like you. I went to an English medium school and I loved the language. It was almost came naturally to me without any pressure or challenges which I remember of. So I just learned English naturally. About my YouTube channel, it's been like around 1 year and 3 months, or maybe 1.5 year roughly, that I have started the channel. So it's going well because it is kind of interactive. I'm not just sitting and talking and telling people do this, do this, do this, and improve. It's having conversations, giving them the opportunity to connect with me, ask their
Yes.
queries, and involve themselves in conversations. Because at the end of the day, English is all it's all about a language. You have to talk the language. What will you get by just sitting and listening to what I'm telling you? Come talk to me and let's solve the problem. Let's speak to each other. So that was the idea behind the channel.
Okay, that's lovely. I think it's beautiful the way how you are like, dealing with this thing, and it's lovely because yes, of course, when it comes to speaking, yes, they have to speak, even to learn to speak, they have to actually speak. People have this thing like, try to read books and all
Mm,
of these things, although using all those conventional methods. I believe that it is something which might help you in writing rather than speaking, you know. But when it comes to speaking directly, just start speaking, and I feel like, people should, the very first thing is to have confidence that yes, you can speak and yes, you can learn. Once you get that confidence in you, later on, all those learning part and everything gets really easy. I think, that's how it goes. But once you get but there are people who don't, have this confidence to just speak. So I think it's lovely that, you're engaging students in such a way, in an interactive way, where they can learn while they're speaking and it's interactive. That's lovely.
thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So this conversation was very, very informative, and it's definitely going to help people who are watching it. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. I really look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. Bye bye.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. Good luck. Bye.